Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. Hope everyone's doing well. I think there'll be a few more that will jump on, but before we get started, any questions or anything in your own mind that you want to bring up? All right, everybody's compliant. No questions. All right, today we're going to talk about a part of the business that we don't like, which is cancellations. So I wanted to go through all of the ways to cancel different things because if we don't cancel correctly, then one, we still have a contract in play, but we also can put our clients in a position they could lose earnest money or other problems that we can see. So we want to make sure we cancel everything correct and on time. So I'm going to go through all the different cancellations today. Let me share this with you. Okay. You should be able to see that. Russ, you see it? Perfect. Okay, so different cancellations that we can run across. This first one we're going to talk about is exclusive right to sell. So there's lots of reasons why we would have to cancel the exclusive right to sell. They decide they're not going to move. They decide they want to take it off the market. They're doing something else. Any reason whatsoever they come up. This is the cancellation for that. So as much as they want to just say, oh, we just don't want to sell it anymore, we actually have to cancel our contract. So this is the one that we're going to do that with. Says cancellation and termination of the exclusive right to sell agreement. Number one, exclusive right to sell listing agreement disclosure, the Century 21 and then the seller. And remember, all listings and buyers are, the clients are Russ, the brokerage. So it's not just the agent, it's the company. And then the agreement is the day that your exclusive right to sell was effective. So you put that date there. This one's a mutual termination of agreement. So both of us, so we have responsibilities in a contract and the seller has responsibility in a contract. So this gives us an opportunity to break those. This does give you an opportunity here where it says this agreement the agreement's protection period is not canceled or terminated. So this is the section where you're saying my protection period is 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. So if somebody went through the home, you showed somebody through a home, you could still be protected. They still have to pay you for that. If you read the contract, I didn't put the contract here, I probably should have, but if you read the contract, it basically says if they list the property with somebody else, then that protection period goes away anyway. So here, this is basically saying, yeah, we're going to cancel the contract, but if I showed the home to somebody and they decide they want to buy it, I'm not going to cancel that protection period. So most likely you'll want to check that box just so that you're protected. I always say the protection period is just, it's in the contract to keep people honest. You know, if they're trying to get out of paying you a commission, that's where that protection period is there. If they really truly are just trying to cancel the contract, they don't want to sell it or they got other plans, then it doesn't really matter. But if they're trying to get out of it, you'll want that protection period in there. Just because we don't sell the property doesn't mean we can't actually get some money back from it. The seller agrees to pay the company the amount of, and that number is really up to you as agents. I've seen people look at it and say, okay, they canceled after 2 weeks and we've taken photos, we've taken, we put the sign up, we've got different expenses that you have. So if they're canceling it and you can get some of that money back, that's where you're going to put it. Like I said, that amount is up to you. You don't have to charge it, you can charge it. If we go back to like the photos, we only will reimburse you if it closes. So if the listing cancels, you're going to be out that money. So if you want your client to pay that, you can put that money there. And then the effective date, the cancellation termination agreement shall be effective upon signing by both parties. So this is the same as exclusive right to sell. If your sellers just sign it, but we don't accept it, we're not accepted from the company, then it's still not valid yet. So just make sure you're either signing it or Russ or I, or as the brokers are signing it so that you cancel and get out. When you go to the MLS, you're going to put that as canceled status. So it'll be canceled. Okay, if you got a buyer broker agreement, the form is the exact same as the seller one. The only difference is it says cancellation of the exclusive buyer broker agreement. You can still get paid. I know of some agents who showed some properties down south. They drive a long ways. They canceled their buyer broker agreement and still got reimbursed for some of their time and their gas. So, there's still an opportunity there. You don't have to do it, but it's still built in here. Same thing, you have to sign it, the buyer has to sign it. So that's how you're going to cancel the two. Now let's go back to the seller's, the listing. Let's say that the seller wants to cancel it. They don't want to put it on the MLS, but they're saying they're not going to sell it. They're just going to keep it off the MLS. What we have in our dot loop is a withdrawal, conditional withdrawal. Okay, so in consideration of the Century 21's listing brokers to remove the listing of the property located, and then you're going to put the address here and the MLS right here. Doesn't look like there's a blank line there, but that's where you're going to put it. From the WFR MLS system, a further agreement for the brokerage to withhold their efforts to secure a buyer for the property. So this one is designed to not cancel the contract, our exclusive right to sell, but it's giving them us permission that we're no longer looking for a buyer for them. We're not putting it on the MLS, but our actual term of our contract is still in play. So they're relieving us of our efforts to find the buyer, and they agree that in the terms and conditions of this listing to pay a commission to the event that said property or leased, exchanged by myself or any other person, firm, or corporation during the term of the original listing contract period to the expiration date. So if I take a 6-month listing and at the end of 1 month, the seller says, I actually don't really want to sell it anymore, I'm going to pull it off the market, then we might want to just do a withdrawal, conditional withdrawal, which keeps our contract in play if you took a 6-month listing, it keeps it in play for 6 months, and then it will expire at the end. That way, one, they can't relist it if that's their intention. They can't relist it without us knowing about it. But two, if they don't want it on the MLS right now, they've got some other things they're working out. The minute it expires and it's canceled, that's when it's going to trigger phone calls from other agents. It's going to be in that system. This way, you still have a valid contract. I'm not saying that they wouldn't still get some phone calls if you put it on the MLS in the wrong category as under canceled, but it really should go under withdrawn on the MLS so that you don't have that problem. Seller agrees to reimburse listing brokerage, same thing, just in case they're going to give you some expenses. And then as a brokerage, it's always good to just put the reason down why we're pulling it off. And you're going to have the seller sign it, and then Russ or I can help you with pulling this off the market. So there's 2 ways to do it. One is I'm completely canceling it, and then I have no other obligations. They have no obligations. You're going to put that on the MLS as canceled, and they could go list it with somebody else, and they could stay, do whatever they want. Or in this case, with the withdrawal, conditional withdrawal is basically saying my listing contract's staying in play, but I'm not required to market it and look for a buyer right now. So any questions on the exclusive right to sell or the exclusive buyer broker agreement and how to cancel those if we need to?
Quick question, where is it located? Is it in dot loop under C21 forms?
Yes. Yep. Under C21 forms, you can find this withdrawal one. The other ones, I think, are in there as well, but these two, the cancellations, are also in the MLS. So you can find those 2 forms in the MLS or dot loop, and this withdrawal one you can only find in dot loop. This is a company specific contract that we made. That's basically saying we don't have to market it. Okay, so now let's switch gears for a minute. We're still on cancellations, but let's switch gears to the REPC. So you've got a normal transaction that you're going through. You represent the buyer. If for some reason they want to cancel the contract, this is the form that you're going to use for that, buyer's notice of cancellation. You're going to fill out the top portion. You should have all that information from your REPC. And then you got to ask yourself the question, when you get down to sections 1, 2, and 3, what is the reason I'm canceling? And where is it in the contract as far as the dates are concerned? So if I'm canceling prior to my due diligence deadline, the only box I need to check is box number 1. I don't need to check box number 1 and give another reason. I've seen it, somebody check number 1 and then they check other down here and then they give a reason. If you're canceling before due diligence, just cancel because of due diligence. And there doesn't need to be a reason in the contract. It says, you know, buyer's sole discretion. So if a client or if a seller calls and says, why are you canceling? I would just suggest you say, we're canceling based on due diligence. I wouldn't, anytime we get real into the weeds of why we're canceling it can cause more problems. And the contract says we can cancel it just because of sole discretion. I don't want to be in the contract. So item number 1 is prior to your due diligence deadline, I'm canceling the contract. And then earnest money's released according to section 8.1B of the contract. Okay, now let's say that we passed the due diligence deadline, but we're before our financing deadline. So we still have contingencies in there. That's where item number 2 comes in, notice of cancellation after REPSI, or after the due diligence deadline, but prior to finance and appraisal deadline. Buyer hereby agrees to give notice of cancellation to REPSI between buyer and seller regarding the above property after due diligence, but prior to financing and appraisal deadline. Okay, so if your deadline for financing and appraisal has not happened yet, then I would always check number 2, because one reason is under the financing cancellation, that also says under buyer's sole discretion. So it doesn't say you have to be qualified. And this is where our misconception is with some contracts that come in. They say, well, they canceled based on financing. I talked to the lender. The lender said they are qualified just fine. So the wording in the REPSI specifically talks about at their sole discretion if they're not happy with any of the terms or conditions of the loan. So because they still qualify, if the rate is higher, or let's say they have to pay a little bit more down payment than they feel comfortable with, that's a reason to cancel based on financing. The good thing about canceling on financing is the sole remedy for a seller when a buyer cancels on financing is the earnest money. Okay, they can't, there's 3 things that can happen when a buyer cancels a contract out of these contingencies. 1, the seller can sue them for performance, which I've never actually seen that happen in Utah for performance, where a seller is suing the buyer to perform. Most judges are going to look at it and say, well, just go find another buyer. We're not going to force this buyer to buy your property. And there's so many other things that are in play there that could change whether they would be required to buy your property. The second one is they could take their or leave the earnest money and sue you for damages, which, you know, could be a lot more money, especially if you as a seller put on a new roof, did all some kinds of repairs and stuff, and then the buyer defaults. They'd probably want to come back for some of those costs because you defaulted. So then the third one is they just get the earnest money. When you cancel on financing, financing only has one remedy, and that's the earnest money. So just keep that in mind. So in this case, we're before the financing and appraisal deadline. We're going to cancel. We're going to check box number 2. Now, let's say that we've passed all those deadlines. We're now past either the due diligence deadline or the financing and appraisal deadline. They've already passed and we still need to cancel the contract. That's where number 3 comes in. Number 3 is canceling based off of any one of these reasons. Financing condition 8.3BI2, which is after financing the deadline, but they're still canceling based on financing. Risk of loss, that's in there, subject to sell of our buyer's property, didn't sell, FHA addendum, secondary backup addendum, short sell addendum, or any other reason that they decide to cancel. So if you put other in there, as an office, we're gonna want to make sure that we know where the earnest money is going. So if you cancel it after these deadlines, we'll just want to make sure that we know exactly where things are going. So anytime there's confusion, we're going to ask you for clarification on those. But then they sign this and send this to the seller. Any questions on the buyer's cancellation? Okay. Now we're going to go into seller's notice of cancellation. So sometimes in a contract, there's ways for a seller to get out of a contract. There's not as many as a buyer, but if the seller needs to cancel the contract, these are the reasons here. Okay, so you're going to fill out this first part. Number one, notice of cancellation of contract. Seller hereby gives notice of cancellation of the REPC with an offer reference date. So that's the date of the offer between the buyer and seller regarding the property. Cancellation is based on one of the following: short sale addendum, financing conditions, seller, financing addendum, risk of loss, or other. Okay, so if the seller needs to cancel it for some reason, this is where they're going to do it. This particular document actually gives the release of earnest money. So they can specify where that earnest money is going. If the seller is canceling it and sending it to, if the seller cancels and they're going to collect the earnest money, we're going to just need to make sure that this, whatever reason they gave behind it, is grounds for them to actually cancel, for them to get the earnest money back. If they cancel it, they sign this, and the money's going back to the buyer, then this will be evidence enough for us as a brokerage to release it back to the buyer because the seller agreed that it went back to the buyer. Okay. The one that I see the most for seller cancellation is buyer didn't show up to closing, and then they want to put it back on the market. In order for us to put it back on the market, we actually have to have an official cancellation of the REPC to do that. So in Utah, our contracts don't stop at the deadlines. They just go into default. So if you pass settlement deadline and nobody closed, your contract's still in play. You just didn't, nobody closed. So you have a contract that has a default on it. So a seller could cancel at that point that the buyer didn't settle. And that's your cancellation for that. Any questions on the seller side? Okay, last one that we're going to go through is the contingent cancellation. Okay, so this is the scenario where this is between the buyer and seller within the REPC. This is where we're coming up on our deadlines. We don't want to lose our earnest money. This is kind of our last ditch effort that says, I need you to do this. Otherwise, I'm going to cancel the contract. And this doesn't give you very many options of, we need to do this. What it gives us is options to move 2 dates forward. And these should really encompass anything that we need to make happen. I know there's sometimes it's I need this to happen, some specific feature, the buyer needs to agree to fixing the roof and we're waiting for it. Well, this will be covered in your due diligence. So if you look at this right here, the first part is the same as any other addendum. It just puts it into the contract. And then item number 1, it says extension of deadlines. Seller and buyer agree to the following, check applicable boxes. So you can do 1, you can do or 2. Okay, you're going to check one of them. Due diligence deadline to be extended, financing appraisal to be extended. So depending on where you are in the contract and what you're trying to accomplish is going to determine which one of these they're going to extend. Now, I have seen it where you check one of these and actually it's in this next section. I'll share that in a second when I get here. But the extension so if you have like a roof that you're trying to fix and everyone's kind of negotiating back and forth, you're going to just want to extend the due diligence deadline and then you can still solve all those problems. It gives you more time. So you don't really need to have other terms in here as long as you're dealing with both of these deadlines, because you're going to extend it for those reasons. Now, if these deadlines have already passed, doing a contingent cancellation isn't going to, you don't need to do that. This is so you don't pass the the deadline, and you can protect your client's earnest money. Number two is this notice of cancellation. This is the contingent cancellation part of this. So if you're extending a deadline, that's great. You don't need to do this one, but if you want to cancel, if they don't accept it, it says if for any reason seller does not accept the terms of this addendum in its entirety by the applicable deadline below, this addendum shall act as written notice of cancellation of the buyer pursuant to, and then it's going to give you a checkbox. Now, this addendum is created for just changing the two dates. I've seen contracts come in where an agent has copied and pasted this addendum into another addendum, and they've added other terms. And then when they add other terms, the seller comes back and they counter one of those terms. And the minute they do that, this is gonna be canceled, because it says if seller doesn't accept this addendum in its entirety by the applicable deadline, then it will be a cancellation. So I don't recommend copying this and putting it into another addendum and putting more terms. But if you do, that's what you have to make sure you're aware of, that if they don't accept it, it's considered canceled. Now, if they cancel it, it's going to be based off of one of these things. If your due diligence deadline is already passed, do not click A, because then you're canceling based off of due diligence deadline. Now, the question that I've got from this is, my financing deadline hasn't happened yet, but my due diligence deadline has. I meant to cancel it based on financing, but I accidentally checked the wrong box. The problem is when you cancel based off of 8.1, the earnest money is now going to the seller. If you're canceling based off of 8.2 and 3, then the earnest money can go back to the buyer. So if you check the wrong box, earnest money is going to the wrong person. And I can tell you that your client's not going to be happy with a clerical error of checking the wrong box. So in fact, I was reading one yesterday where somebody is claiming clerical error, and you knew what I meant. But the reality is, if you check the wrong box, doesn't matter if you meant something different. If you check the wrong box, it's going to put a problem in with your client. So, okay, deadline to accept this deadline shall have until they check these boxes. So you have to accept this before the last mutually accepted due diligence deadline prior to this addendum. So before that deadline or before the financing appraisal deadline. So that's saying that, let's say my deadline's at 5 o'clock tonight. That gives them the time to make sure they get this signed before that deadline. Otherwise, it automatically cancels. You protect your earnest money moving forward. Okay. Any questions on the contingent cancellation? Any question on any cancellation whatsoever? Something we are going to cancel. Hopefully you guys don't have to cancel very much, but we see that every day. So either you guys are all confused or it was easily understood.
We'll call you when it happens. You know how that goes.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, if you have questions anytime, call us, because it's better to, in fact, I get this a lot when I hear other agents, they call in, they're like, I know this, but I just need to verify it. And that's why Russ and I are working together, because I know it and I just need Russ to verify it. And then when he verifies it, I feel much better about it. Or if I don't know it, then Russ knows it. So then we're good anyway. So, all right. Any other questions? Anything else related to compliance or that anyone has questions about?
I just want to thank you because you're always available. You're so great to help us. And my favorite line is my first day in real estate, because I love that I can double check myself because I don't know everything. And sometimes you do have the right answer, but you just want to confirm. And I think it's better for us to do that than just go our own way and get in trouble later. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
In fact, actually, Jason, real quick on that, I had actually an agent this morning right before this call call me to talk about removing the subject to sale of the buyer's property addendum. And had they not called me to verify, they would have done, because of the way the whole deal was structured, would have ended up removing all of the contingencies for their client. And so, yeah, I think it's, Jason and I are never going to feel like, oh, you've been doing real estate this long and you don't know that. Well, we might feel like that, but I'm just kidding. But we'd rather you do that than mess up something along the way that puts your client in a bad position. So yeah, please reach out.
Oh, perfect. Okay, awesome. You guys have a great weekend. It's going to be a warm one out there. If you have questions, reach out.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.